Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unlocking the absolute powerhouse that is human curiosity, and specifically how you can leverage it in modern digital marketing. Look, we all know we live in an era where everyone is just screaming to be heard. But what if the real secret to capturing an audience isn't shouting louder? What if it's actually whispering a secret and then suddenly stopping mid-sentence? That's what we're diving into today. The very real, very profound science of marketing through mystery. Actually, let's start by opening a loop right now. I am going to tell you exactly why it is physically impossible to stop watching after just one episode of your favorite Netflix show. Like why you inevitably end up binging 4 hours when you only sat down for one. But you're going to have to stick with me until the very end of this explainer to find out the biological reason why. Consider it a live demonstration of exactly what we're about to study. All right, Section 1, the battle for attention. We're facing a massive challenge in today's digital economy. The reality is simply stopping the scroll, yeah, that's no longer enough to win. The landscape has totally shifted from the days when we had a captive TV audience. 3 seconds. That's it. Grabbing someone's eye in those first 3 seconds is literally just the entry fee now. Why? Because algorithms on platforms like Meta and TikTok ruthlessly optimize for sustained retention and watch time. Sure, a flashy visual might earn you a quick pause, but if your content instantly pivots into a predictable sales pitch, well, your viewer is already gone. And that brings us to the core difference. Attention is just a fleeting interruption. It's a quick tap on the shoulder. But curiosity? Curiosity creates an actual gap in information that the viewer actively wants to close. The best performing creative doesn't just interrupt us, it creates a mental itch. And since platforms heavily reward content that keeps people watching, saving, and sharing, human curiosity becomes the ultimate tool for producing those juicy algorithmic signals. Moving on to Section 2. The Zeigarnik effect explained. This next concept is wild, and it's rooted in a psychological phenomenon discovered all the way back in 1927 by psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik. The Zeigarnik effect perfectly explains that nagging mental itch you feel when something is left hanging. It's kind of like, well, the lack of closure from a high school breakup that somehow still randomly crosses your mind. Our brains absolutely despise unfinished business. When a story or a task is left incomplete, it stays active in the background of our cognition, practically screaming for resolution. So the big takeaway here is that our brains are quite literally hardwired to seek closure. And as marketers, we can use these open loops to build irresistible tension. Think about it. When you only get a tiny snippet of a story, you are practically forced by your own neurology to find out how it ends. It's this exact mechanism that magically transforms a passive, casual scroller into a highly engaged prospect. Okay, Section 3, the 7-second hook formula. For decades, we were taught that stories follow the slow, predictable arc, right? Setup, build, climax, and resolution. But today's audiences operate in a world of endless choices and hyper-fast filtering. Short-form video platforms have completely rewired that traditional framework. Now, we use a highly compressed, 4-step looping formula that actually delivers the climax first. Here's the playbook. You have 0 to 3 seconds to trigger an emotion, 3 to 6 seconds to build the tension, 6 to 10 seconds to deliver a satisfying payoff, and finally, you throw in a loop at the 10 to 12 second mark that re-triggers curiosity and naturally encourages a rewatch. It completely flips the old TV commercial script on its head. To really master this framework, you've got to prioritize emotion first and context second. Rely heavily on visual cues over text, and make sure to leave enough creative space for your audience to mentally participate. Don't just sit there and explain your product. Show a visceral transformation. Make the viewer feel something, whether that's awe, humor, or pure confusion, long before you ever attempt to give them context. Let's get into Section 4, Mastering Teaser Campaigns. So let's actually ground this theory in some hard data. It's easy to write these off as just trendy social media tactics, but there's rigorous academic research backing this up. A recent 2026 study on digital marketing looked into exactly what types of content successfully capture our attention through mystery. Researchers surveyed how audiences reacted to different formats, and the breakdown of what actually gets people to stop their scroll is super revealing. No surprise here, short-form video absolutely dominates when it comes to sparking curiosity, pulling in over 34% of digital engagement. It perfectly aligns with that rapid visual storytelling we just talked about. It really is the ultimate vehicle for executing that hook, tension, payoff loop and triggering the Zeigarnik effect in real time. But get this, simple text posts that leverage a solid quote or a provocative question capture nearly 21% of engagement. That is huge because it proves you don't need a massive Hollywood-style video budget to leverage mystery. A single, brilliantly crafted, thought-provoking question can be just as potent of a hook as a high-end video production. And this craving we all have for authentic connection, it's led to the rise of what people are calling yapper ads. These are longer, unpolished pieces of content that gradually reveal information, almost like you're just having a casual conversation with a friend. Honestly, they violate all the traditional marketing best practices. They aren't highly produced at all, but they work like a charm because they delay the obvious, slowly pulling the viewer in with relatable problems and super authentic dialogue. We're seeing brands absolutely crush it with this. Think about Ryanair's bold self-awareness, or Duolingo's completely chaotic owl mascot. Duolingo isn't just selling a language app, they're creating these ongoing, totally absurd storylines. Or look at Gymshark, giving you micro-motivation that feels like your best friend cheering you on. They have all completely mastered the art of the emotional hook. All right, moving to section 5, curiosity versus clickbait. Okay, before you rush off and start making wild cliffhangers, we need to clarify something absolutely crucial. There's a very fine and honestly very dangerous line between drawing someone in and aggressively manipulating them. Curiosity builds trust because it eventually rewards the viewer's attention with a valuable answer. Clickbait, on the other hand, it just withholds information without any meaningful payoff. If you trick a user into clicking and hit them with a frustrating wall of low-value text or an irrelevant sales page, they're going to bounce hard, and the algorithms will absolutely punish you for that fast bounce rate. The golden rule here is simple. Every promise should be fulfilled, and every story needs a worthwhile conclusion. If you're going to open a loop, you have to respect your audience enough to actually close it. You're forming an implicit contract with your viewer. You're asking for their time, and in exchange, you must deliver the promised value, insight, or entertainment. Make every single second worth it. And hey, speaking of closing loops and honoring contracts, it's time to pay off the promise I made to you right at the start of this explainer. I promise to tell you exactly why your brain absolutely refuses to let you turn off Netflix after a dramatic cliffhanger. Here is the crazy biological truth. You can't stop watching because an unresolved cliffhanger literally spikes your body's cortisol levels. It induces stress, and clicking next episode is quite literally the only way your brain knows how to relieve that anxiety and get your heart rate back to normal. You aren't just mildly curious, you're experiencing a physiological stress response, and the content itself is the cure. How wild is that? That is the astonishing biological power of the open loop. Ultimately, the big takeaway is that attention is no longer measured in minutes. It is won or lost in seconds. The first 7 seconds determine whether you earn the right to the next 30. Your ability to craft an emotional open loop dictates your success. We've moved into a digital reality where constraint actually sharpens creativity. Don't view a short time frame as a limitation, view it as a discipline. I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on as the digital landscape keeps evolving. Let's say you master human psychology. You completely nail the 7-second hook today. But what happens to your brand storytelling when artificial intelligence fully takes over and decides entirely what content users see next? Keep that loop open in your mind. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and we will catch you in the next one.